Harry Houdini died on Halloween in 1926 after a college student punched him in the stomach. For 100 years, everyone thought those punches killed the famous escape artist. Some people even believed angry fortune tellers poisoned him for revenge. But now, after a whole century, new facts have come out. Medical doctors have discovered what really happened in those last few days of his life. The truth about how Houdini died isn't what anyone thought it would be. Was someone trying to kill him? Was it an accident? Or was it something completely different? Harry Houdini was born on March 24, 1874 in Budapest, Hungary. His birth name was actually Erich Weiss. His parents were Rabbi Meyer Samuel Weiss and Cecilia Steiner. He was the fourth kid out of 7 children, and one of his half-brothers came from his dad's first marriage. Their house was full of noise, money problems, and religious faith. His younger sister, Carrie Gladys, would later lose most of her eyesight in a horrible accident. His dad was 45 years old when Erich was born. He had studied in Germany and learned about law before becoming a rabbi. But life in Hungary back then was getting harder and harder for Jewish families. Hatred against Jewish people was spreading quickly. Rabbi Weiss's old-fashioned ways didn't fit in with the modern changes happening in Budapest, and his family felt pressure from both being poor and facing discrimination. By 1876, things got so terrible that Rabbi Weiss made a heartbreaking choice. He left his wife and 5 kids behind and traveled to America all by himself, hoping to find a better life for his family. For 2 whole years, Cecilia stayed in Budapest, barely able to survive while raising young Erich, his brothers and sisters, and carrying another baby. It was a sad and scary time for everyone. On July 3, 1878, Cecilia, who was pregnant again, left Hungary with her children. They got on a ship called the SS Frisia and went through a tough 15-day trip in terrible bottom-deck conditions, all while the temperature in New York was hitting 95 degrees. When they finally arrived, they were probably met by Cecilia's sister, who had already moved to New York. Not long after that, the whole family took a train ride to Appleton, Wisconsin, where Rabbi Weiss had found a job as the town's very first rabbi. They changed their last name to Weiss and Erich, became known as Erich. They lived on Appleton Street, which people now call Houdini Plaza. Rabbi Weiss became an American citizen on June 6, 1882. That little house in Appleton became the place where a 6-year-old boy quietly fell in love with locks and keys. One day, he picked open a lock that had been used to keep the kids away from a cabinet. What started as just playing around soon turned into something he couldn't stop thinking about. He began opening locks, taking things apart, and learning exactly how everything worked. His mom didn't think it was a big deal at first, but she was actually watching a boy discover the skill that would completely change his life forever. But in 1882, everything fell apart. Rabbi Weiss lost his job at the Appleton synagogue. Some people said it was because he was too old-fashioned and couldn't speak English very well, but others believed it was because of fighting within the Jewish community. The synagogue was mostly made up of German Jews who wanted someone from their own background to be their leader. Rabbi Weiss, who was born in Hungary, didn't fit into their plans at all. For 8-year-old Erich, it was really painful to watch. He saw his family lose their home, their money, and their respect. They had to move to Milwaukee, where being poor took over their whole lives. His proud father now had trouble finding even the simplest jobs to do. In Milwaukee, young Erich shined people's shoes and sold newspapers on freezing street corners, just to make a few pennies. His father, who used to be a respected rabbi, couldn't find any steady work at all. Many nights, Erich went to bed feeling cold and hungry. His mother did absolutely everything she could to keep the family fed, but there was never enough money. This suffering shaped how Erich thought about life. He started to believe that the only way to escape being poor was through his own skills and working really hard. At just 9 years old, Erich joined a cheap traveling circus under the stage name Erich, Prince of the Air. He was small and bendy, twisting his body in ways that made audiences amazed and shocked. He had a trick called the dead man's drop, and he could even pick up a pin using only his eyelid. It was crazy and dangerous work, but he absolutely loved doing it. Even though he was just a kid, the circus workers saw him as way more grown-up than his age. He was learning about timing, getting attention, and how to wow people watching him. These early circus shows were his first lessons in how to control a crowd and keep them interested. In 1887, when Erich was 13 years old, the family moved one more time. This time they went to New York City. That's where everything changed for him. At a local library, Eric found a book that would shape his entire future. It was the life story of a French magician named Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin. Houdin had performed magic tricks for kings, and even used his magic to calm down rebellions and stop violence. His style and power absolutely amazed Eric. He was so inspired by this magician that he changed his own name to Houdini, adding an I at the end because he thought it meant like Houdin in French. He was actually wrong about the grammar rules, but it didn't matter at all. A completely new identity was born that day. By 1892, Eric had saved up 75 cents to buy a trick coin for magic. That was actually a lot of money for him back then. He started doing small magic shows in his own backyard, charging neighborhood kids a little bit of money to watch his tricks. But that same year, something happened that would absolutely crush his heart. On October 5, 1892, his father died at age 63, most likely from tongue cancer. Eric was only 18 years old. His father had always believed in him in his dreams, and now he was gone forever. At the funeral, Eric made a silent promise to himself that he would never let his mother suffer like this again. That promise became what drove him forward. After his father died, Eric got a job cutting neckties in a factory in Manhattan. He worked 12-hour days, 6 days every single week. The place was dusty, loud, and showed no mercy to workers. But Eric didn't waste his break times at all. Behind big piles of fabric, he practiced his magic tricks. During lunch breaks, he studied locks and how they worked. One day, a police officer accidentally left behind a pair of handcuffs, and Eric couldn't stop staring at them with curiosity. He studied every single piece of them, learning exactly how they worked. At night, he stayed up late practicing escapes, using tools he found around the factory. Nobody around him knew that the quiet boy with rough, worn-out hands was building a future as the most famous escape artist in the whole world. In 1891, Eric teamed up with Jacob Heyman, a friend from the factory, and together they became a duo called the Brothers Houdini. Their best trick was called metamorphosis, where one of them would be tied up and locked inside a trunk, only to switch places with the other person in just seconds. The trick was probably copied from another performer, but their version of it was special and unique. When Jacob left the magic act, Eric's brother Theodore, whose nickname was Dash, took his place instead. They had a really hard time earning money, performing at cheap museums and small county fairs. But metamorphosis stayed with Houdini for his whole life, and magicians still use versions of it today. The worst part of it all came in 1893, when they had to work in something called dime museums. These were really sad places where people paid just pennies to see weird oddities and freak shows. Houdini performed for almost no money at all, sometimes while his father was still working in a tie factory and dying from cancer. Eric also had to shine shoes just to survive and eat. The conditions were embarrassing and humiliating, and he never forgot how shameful it felt. Later in life, he said those days were so painful that the less he talked about them, the better it was for everyone. Then love came into his life. On June 22, 1894, Houdini married Bess Rona, a Catholic girl from Brooklyn, who performed in a singing group. They met at Coney Island and got married just 3 weeks after meeting each other. His mother didn't approve of the marriage, but they went ahead and did it anyway. Bess replaced his brother as his stage partner, and together they became known as the Houdinis. She was small, quick, and absolutely perfect for their escape acts and tricks. Houdini completely adored her. He wrote her sweet little notes and called her his precious lump of sweetness. Their love story started with shows at Coney Island and lasted for 32 years together. But even as their magic act got better and better, hatred followed them everywhere. Being Jewish in 1890s America wasn't easy at all. In 1895, show promoters sometimes refused to pay them money simply because of their religion and background. Houdini later said that rival performers insulted him behind his back, and some even called him Judas during public hearings and meetings. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous writer, insulted him by mocking his Jewish heritage. The prejudice and discrimination was absolutely everywhere around them. But Houdini never backed down from it. He kept pushing forward, totally determined to be so successful that no one could ever ignore him again. In 1899, everything changed for the better. In St. Louis, at a police station, Houdini stripped completely naked and escaped from handcuffs and leg shackles in just 2 minutes and 40 seconds. That amazing performance caught the attention of Ma.